our little honeydews, and welcome to Sippin N Bitchin, where the drinks are icy and the book talk is rather spicy. This is episode 6, A Light in the Flame, and we're your main bitches. I'm Sam.
And I'm Steph. It is later than what we usually record, and I am having an Alani at 7 p.m. because
I'm having an energy drink at 4 p.m., so you know.
we're doing great. Listen, it was happy July for first of all. It was
July.
tough. It was a tough little week last week, and almost canceled this episode release, but we trudged through.
Yep.
And here we are. If you are watching this on YouTube, you notice my new background, which is not new to Sam, but it's new to y'all. So,
Woo! I've seen the progression of her being there, then her new spot, now here again. It's full circle, guys.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll change relatively again in the next week or so. But yeah, neither here nor there. We're here to talk about A Light in the Flame.
Woo!
Multiple parts. This book has 47 chapters. We are continuing Sarah and Niktos' story. We're gonna try to do 3 parts, but it'll probably end up being 4 parts. I kind of want to see kind of an A/B test of the shorter episodes are more easily digested. But luck of the draw. It is what it is. I don't know. Any questions, comments, concerns before we dive right in, ma'am?
I'm not the audience, so I don't know why I would have any questions, comments, or concerns that we did not just discuss right before starting.
That is true. We did just discuss.
Yeah, we did.
We really just did.
We had our own little dialogue going of the pronunciations. We talked
I was gonna
about what we're
say,
going over.
this book does have the pronunciation guide at the beginning. I am not including it in this week's show notes for those in the Patreon group because frankly,
it pisses us off.
just upsets us. So we're gonna say the names and they'll probably be wrong per the pronunciation guide. But when it's ingrained in your brain, we stay insane. And that is all I have to say about that.
I like that saying.
You're welcome. TM, trademark that. All right, so we go right in. The literally first line of the book goes, "You are the heir to the lands and seas, skies and realms, a queen instead of a king. You are the primal of life. Niktos, the Asher, the one who is blessed, the guardian of souls, and the primal god of common men and endings, rasped." And then we go into this whole Niktos bowing down, like showing respect.
Right.
And Holland's coming in, which let's talk about the pronunciation guides, pronunciation of Holland. But Holland, Sarah is very much in the mindset of, I don't deserve this respect. Like, I'm just a mere mortal. Not a damsel, but just a mere mortal. And Holland's all
try
like,
to kill you.
well, yes. And Holland's all like, no, like, this is your role. You deserve this. You are, like, take this respect and roll with it. And, they also say that she is the possibility for a future, or for a future for all. And I put in parentheses, no pressure. And
None
so
at
she
all.
is like,
can you imagine going from the pressure of just your kingdom and having to save them to now the pressure of you're the future for both realms, gods, primals, everyone?
oh, that would have been so bad if I just said what I was about to say.
Oh,
but no, it would have just been a spoiler, which I think we've already discussed, but I don't know if we can discuss, so I'm gonna just anyway. Listen, I would be overwhelmed just by me not being like, just knowing that I got some juice. Cancel what I was
Please
supposed
continue.
To say.
Please continue.
Knowing I got some remnants. All right, in me that
After
are
one,
like,
we're already unhinged.
listen. Anyway, and then Sarah's snapping at Niktos for reading her emotions, which he like does a lot, to be honest with you. And like it's
Or
another
Poppy the Popcorn.
parallel. I was gonna say it was just another parallel to Poppy, and I love the I said this last episode, but I very much love the subtle like trait things that we find out in the books
Mhm.
so that we can kind of like draw parallels to them.
Especially since everyone talks about how similar Sarah and Poppy are, but no one hits on the traits of
The
Nyctos that she
Toast and Sarah.
has.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because she is the product of both of them.
exactly.
And
It
whatever.
makes me excited to get to know her father too when we get there. Anyways.
Oh, anyways, exactly. Um, so he's trying to read her emotions. She's doing her whole breathe in, breathe out, hold, blah blah blah.
Mood.
Um, and she's coming to this realization that her mortal body and mind wouldn't be able to handle the power of the embers once she began the ascension. And she's like coming to this realization that any direction that the path that she walks leads to death at this point. And that is a huge theme throughout this whole fucking book.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going through this whole thing, and Niktos touches her, and she is like, after everything, Niktos touched me, and he's like, "Are you all right?" Kind of thing. And Holland comes in with his, "She has trouble slowing her heart and breathing sometimes," and Niktos is all like, "I've noticed, you dumb fuck." He doesn't say it like that because he has to be
uh,
respectful, but um,
you
and
don't say.
yeah, and she's coming to, and like right before this, she's like reliving all this shit with Niktos, and she's all like, "I'd been Niktos's first, and he would be my last, no matter what happened from this point forward," because she
Oh,
doesn't expect to, survive
live.
any of this
Yeah.
situation. And I'm just like, um. So then they're going into the prophecy and like the concept behind prophecies, and Penelope is just like, prophecies can often be confusing, no shit, even though to those who receive them, and sometimes only bits and pieces of a prophecy are known by one, the beginning or the end, while the middle is known to another, and vice versa. I
Oh,
think this is
foreshadowing.
well, that, and it's also kind of a another illustration of the balance between
Mm-hmm.
live, dead, this, that, all the other things.
Yeah.
um But some visions come to pass both in Elysium and in the mortal realm. It's hard to see this since the destruction of the gods of divination and the passing of the last of the oracles.
The
And then
who?
exactly. So we're introduced to the gods of divination, which are gods that were able to see what was hidden to others, their truths both past and future. They called Mount Lotho home and served in Embrese's court. Mount Lotho. Anyone recall a Mount Lotho being mentioned in previous stories? No? Okay,
Do-do-do-do.
I will proceed. um the oracles would speak to them, and they were the only gods truly welcomed by the array. I, I'm not gonna second guess myself. Um
Airy, but array's fine.
air is it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, here we are. Already going strong. Um, and then they're going into the consequences of what Collis did when he stole the embers were far-reaching. Hundreds of gods were lost in the shockwave. The gods of divination took the hardest hit. They were all but destroyed, and no other mortal was born an
What
oracle,
an
which
ass.
honestly is tragic. And I think this, hmm, I don't like Collis, but I will talk about him more later.
I think this information and the Balfour line is going to become very important. And I think it explains some of the questions I had about Ian.
Which one? The gods of
It,
divination?
it no, it comes later in the book when they like
Oh, yeah.
find who they're looking for and stuff. But I mean, we're gonna talk about it, but like, I think it explains why Ian knew the stories that he knew, and we had no idea how he knew them. And I think it's because of his family line.
Which fate? I would say fate has intervened at this point, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We'll get to that.
Thoughts on my head.
Anyway, so they're continuing this conversation with Penelope, the goddess, not not Poppy.
Poppy.
Yeah, yo, the OG, the OG.
This timeline's Penelope, not the other timeline's Penelope. Oh, it's gonna be great when they're in the same timeline, man.
And then Sarah, oh, I'm so excited. Sarah's just like, do I look like her, like Satoria, which is Collis's Gracia, or however you want to pronounce that. And Penelope is like, if Collis had seen you and you looked like her, like he would have taken you right there.
Mm-hmm.
And Nyctos
Oh,
in his full primal Nyctosiness. He says Satoria didn't belong to him then, and Seraphina doesn't belong to him now. And he said her full name, and Sarah in her dialogue goes, I could count on one hand how many people called me by my full name, and none of them spoke it like he did, as if it were a prayer and a reckoning. Could you listen? It's so funny when you read a book and like you talk about the impact of words.
mm-hmm.
The impact of these characters and their dialogue, like, great job,
Yeah.
Jennifer. 10 out of 10. That's all I gotta say about
And,
that.
and I will agree that it's different when someone like says your full name in a certain way.
Hmm.
Because no one says my full name. No one says Samantha. It's weird when they do at this point. Because it's been Sam like my whole life. But when like my husband's being like sweet and like actually like genuine and stuff, and he says Samantha, it's just like, oh, it has like a different like feeling to it. So yeah.
I don't think my husband says my full name ever.
As he should not. No one should.
Yeah, no. Anyway, moving on. So then, okay, so I really wanted to talk about this. This is a recurring theme throughout the book until probably like 3/4 in, but I wanted to talk about how this whole time they are pushing for her to become his consort in order to protect her. This whole, it's like this won't change the situation, but it offers this layer of protection in a world where Sarah just she's like imminent doom. Like, what is the point of this? Like, I'm gonna die. Like, but every single person around her, even people who don't, I guess Holland knows her really well, but like people who relatively don't know her are just like, do this thing. Being his consort will like give you some sort of bubble. A
Yeah.
very thin bubble, but a bubble
It's
nonetheless.
basically like it's hunting season and she's free game until she becomes his consort.
Correct. So then they're talking about the coronation and how there's potentially a chance of Collis coming to the Shadowlands in order to crash their coronation. And Nyctos said that Collis hasn't shown in the Shadowlands since he betrayed my father, but that doesn't mean he can't. And then he goes to Holland and's like, I assume you don't know whether he can or cannot enter the Shadowlands. Or if you do know the answer, it's not something you can tell us. And Holland's like, unfortunately, you would be correct. Um, I think this is a really great kind of illustration of them kind of discussing how life and death balance out. How, and I thought it was interesting how killing a god didn't demand another, or reviving a god didn't demand killing a different god. I thought
Mm-hmm.
that that was an interesting concept that it only applied to mortals. They talk about the revenants. Sorry, I too many N's in these things. They talk about the revenants and then the craven, um, and kind of breaks those down. I will say that I think Poppy and Cass's books break that down. I think because we see them more,
Mhm.
obviously, but I
Yeah,
think the descriptions are broken down better.
yeah. Well, because in here, this is the first time they've ever been created, really,
Correct.
or so it's like they don't even really know what it is. Whereas
Exactly.
by the time you get to Poppy and Castile, it's a common occurrence. So it's here it is.
But then the history of them all is a little skewed based off of the
Mhm.
time and all that stuff. And I
A lot
thought
of the
that was
history's
very,
been erased. They don't know
yeah,
that this is where all this happened.
I think that that's insane. Um, and then, there's just an illustration of Holland and Penelope kind of walking that fine line to help Nyctos and Sarah. I almost said Poppy, that would have been awkward. Um,
Poopy.
so then they're discussing kind of worst case scenario kind of thing. And Penelope is straight up honest with Sarah and is just like, he would find a way to obtain these embers. Perhaps he wouldn't use his cruelest methods to do so, but if he were to realize who you once were, he would stop at nothing to have you. And Niktos is just like, Penelope, like he saying it with his chest, man. And she's like, it's the truth. You cannot hide that from her. You may not be able to even try to do so. And Niktos is all like, you have no idea what I'm capable of doing when necessary. And this is where we're introduced to the, him essentially burning down the Shadowlands to obtain his gracia. The love of his life. That's quote unquote, of course. Um, and then they're talking about how there always must be a balance in everything, even among the primals. Life cannot exist without death, and they should not be one and the same. And Sarah comes to this realization like, you mean primal of both life and death? Is that possible? Because you said should not, didn't say could not. Here we go with the semantics again, or the whatever. And Holland goes, anything is possible, even the impossible. And she straight up just stares at him like, that was a remarkably helpful statement. Thank you. And I'm just like, mood. Mood. And so Nikto says, what he means to say is that such a thing, a primal of both life and death, is not meant to exist. It would be unthinkable for the embers of both to thrive in one being. But if they could, the kind of power they'd wield, it would be truly absolute. They could unravel realms in the same breath they created new ones.
Oh shit.
Like, then Holland adds, there would be no stopping such a being. There could be no balance. Therefore, the fates ensured long ago that such power must be split and that an absence of either ember would cause the collapse of all the realms. It wouldn't be like the rot, a slow death. It would be sudden and absolute for all. Kahlus cannot ascend another primal to take the place of a fallen. By killing Niktos, he'd doom himself. He understands that much at least. Big pause. Do we know things yet? Or can I not say what I was about to say?
I mean, I think we know things. I was gonna say Poppy's got a hell of a
that was in the last book we read, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. We know we know what she is.
Yeah. So with this whole statement, the one thing that I thought of, her prophecy was to help remake the realms, help destroy and then remake whatever. Where Paulus understands he can't kill Niktos, but what my brain is trying to comprehend, which we don't know because we don't know the next book yet, where's the balance? Like, it's not a foregone conclusion. Oh no. It's not a foregone. It's not
she
a
just
foregone
had, if you guys can't see her, but a big light bulb just went off above her head.
If Collis knows that this whole the prophecy period, what's to stop Poppy? Like, we know Poppy's good and has a good sense of self, but what's stopping her from losing that sense of self and becoming some bad baddie? That's not good.
That's where Kieran comes in with his promise. And she can't kill Kieran because his life is tied to hers. But that's what we're gonna find out in the next book. Like, he knows the prophecy, yes, but the problem is Colas, it shows later in the book when he reveals he knows the prophecy that he thinks the full prophecy. Yeah, we learn more. He thinks there's always more. There's always more. But he thinks that the first daughter and the second daughter are referring to Micella and Sarah. He doesn't know about Poppy and Millicent yet.
In this timeline, though.
Yeah.
This is the thing about timelines. There's a multiverse, but it's not really because it's the same timeline, just past, present, and future. Welcome to Our Brains Hurting.
And this is what they mean about, like, prophecies are unpredictable, that's because they're thinking right now, they're not realizing, no, this is gonna happen in like thousands of years.
Yeah,
Like
this thing has been cooking and like and then don't even get me started on Golden
pot's been
Boy.
simmering. What?
Anyway, so anyway, the doom and gloom is in Sarah's future, and that's kind of just the tea. And this
It is her
chapter,
future, yeah.
this chapter ends with um the biggest mic drop, in terms of Holland is like, you haven't heard why he cannot save you as he is now, has she, your highness? And Nyctos is like, no, she has not. And Sarah's like, what are you two talking about? And Nyctos drops the bomb. I cannot love. I made sure that would never be a weakness someone could exploit. And he says, Maya, the primal of love, beauty, and fertility. I had her remove my cardia. Penelope gasps, good fates, I have known none who've done that. And Sarah's like, what is a cardia? And Nyctos replies, it's the piece of the soul, the spark that all live. Oh, Penelope replies, it's the piece of the soul, the spark that all living creatures are born and die with. It allows them to love another, not of their blood, irrevocably, selflessly. Selflessly. It must have been terribly painful to have that torn from you, to truly be unable to love.
Man, guys, that's just the first chapter.
Yeah, that indeed was the first chapter. And so then we're going, chapter 2 picks right back up with this conversation, and Sarah's just like, but you care about so many people, and Nyctos is like, oh, you know, my cardia, getting that out, NBD, no big deal. And he tells her that caring and loving are two vastly different things. I am not incapable of caring for or about another. The cardia is simply unable to sway me, something one would think all primals would ensure. Um, I think this is a great illustration of thinking with your mind versus your heart.
Yeah.
And I think she like explains it late. I don't know if it's in the chapter, but a little bit later, in terms of like actually how painful that was. And could you imagine not I can't imagine us as human beings like not having emotions. Like I know
Yeah.
people have a spectrum of like how they feel and like their empathy and stuff like that, but I can't imagine people having absolutely no emotions. And this just hits really hard for me in terms of just like how painful this whole thing is for me.
I think it does a great job of showing the complexity of emotions too, because he can't truly
Exactly.
love, but that doesn't stop him for caring about people. And it goes into a lot of great detail about the differences between like caring and not caring and love and empathy. Like it just like dives deep into those emotions that you never thought of before in that way.
And I also like how she applies like a scent or like a taste or like a,
Mhm.
things that like when someone tries to explain love, like this is such a new way, and I love that. Like it
Yeah.
just a great embodiment and imagining of it. Anyway, we continue on, and Sarah's like pissed. She's like, "You couldn't have given me a hint that there was truly no point to what you trained me to do." And Holland's all like, "Listen, there was only so much I could do or say."
Mm-hmm.
And then she is like freaking out. She wants to kind of tell Ezra about all the shit that's going
The
down in
rot.
terms of the rot and like what's essentially gonna progress in like the reasoning behind everything. And this is where she learns that Ezra became queen and married Marisol. We
Love it.
stand we stand uh we stand an Ezra and Marisol couple.
Listen, Pride Month may technically be over, but our love for them has not ended ever.
Correct. I think Ezra is one of those, she's like, I don't want to say she's like a Tawny because she's not as prevalent in the series, but she gives such Tawny vibes in terms of like her
Mm-hmm.
attitude towards things, and I think that it's so funny.
Yeah.
And then Penelope is just trying to help, so she suggests a charm that for Sarah that'll protect her from being taken without her consent. And who enters the chat other than Victor, who we learn is the first Victor. So Victor's name is with an ER, and Victor, like he's OR. whatever. And Victor's like, I remember everything, and Penelope's like, because he was the first before the Fates realized it would be easier for them not to recall the details of their lives. So he was the first Victor. And this, I think, is such a turning point, which I guess I didn't realize the impact of this in the Poppy in From Blood and Ash,
Right.
because
Because we don't really know what that means. We just know what they
we
are.
don't. But the fact that Victor comes into the chat, we learn that he's the very first Victor and he remembers everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that like he comes into Poppy's life and she loses him, but the magnitude of this relationship, I think, just surpasses like all these books. And
It like has so many different levels because like, oh, they sent him to Poppy because she's such a strong being and he was the first victor. But it could also be a because he knew them personally. And so that could have also been like why they sent him kind of thing. Like there's so many different like levels to it.
Do you know what I really want? I know Tawny saw Victor in that area in which what? I said Tawny.
I know, I said you want Poppy to see him.
I want a full circle reunion. I want the OG Penelope, Nikto, Sarah, Victor, Holland. Like I want them all to just congregate for the prophecy being whatever the prophecies.
I want her to see Leopold too, though, because he was also one of her victors, and that was who she thought her father was. Like to see
Wasn't
her
Victor,
father.
It was her mom's Victor.
No, he was Poppy's Victor. His first.
No, he was Cora's Victor.
No, Cora tells Malik that Leopold is her Victor. In the memory.
I thought her Victor meaning Cora's Victor.
No,
and they fell in love, and they had Ian.
No, he was Poppy's Victor. He fell in love with Cora. Cora came to get the Poppy, which is how the Fates intervened.
This is like a whole semantics because the her this whole time I thought they were referring to was Cora. No. Oh, I didn't draw the parallel. So that would be really full circle. It'd be so cute.
Both her victors who were both like fathers to her, like, oh, love it. Yeah, put that cherry in your mouth.
Listen here. But can you just imagine like living your life, not remember, I don't know. It's twofold. If you were reincarnated, would you want to know your past lives, or do you think starting new, starting fresh? I guess we wouldn't know if reincarnation is real anyway, but
just like I think I'd like to start fresh.
I think I would be too busy comparing my old life to my new life.
I'd be too stuck in the past.
Then Penelope jumps in to tell more about Victor's story. He saved the life of someone very important and paid a very steep price for doing so. The Fates decided to reward him and later realized they could give aid without upsetting the balance. I wonder who he saved.
I was about to say, I want to know more about his past and what happened. Like,
I wonder if we find that out in the next book.
Maybe we get like a little novella of just like Victor's, his story.
You would think that she would have put it in the damn Visions of Flesh and listen here, Jennifer. I see you hiding some stuff.
She just gave us a sex scene with him instead, which is really disturbing at first.
Anyway, so she's giving background. Holland and Sarah have a little moment in terms of like, he gives her kind of like a. This is him, right? Yeah. The thread that broke off from all the possible strings that chart the course of your life, it was unexpected, unpredictable. Fate is never truly written in bone and blood. It can be as ever-changing as your thoughts, your heart, his, as he points to Niktos. And we're all like, sure, fate can be erratic, but like not with his heart because he doesn't have one. And Holland goes, love is powerful, Seraphina. More so than even the array could imagine. And I'm going to continue to say array. I don't care what anybody says. And then so they're like saying their goodbyes. And Sarah's like, will I see you again? And Holland goes, I can't answer that. But what I can tell you is something you already know. What you spent your life preparing to become, what I trained you for, it wasn't a waste. You are his, italicized. I love how Jennifer does this, weakness. And she comes to the realization, she goes, become his weakness, make him fall in love, end him, not Nyktos, Coelus.
Dun dun dun.
So then she is like going down the spiral. Nyktos is like, what are you thinking about? She's having her existential crises. And Sarah's annoyed that Nyktos keeps reading her emotions, and she's just like, you need to block my emotions. And he's all like, but you're projecting a lot, so maybe don't do that. And it sounds like our other favorite
What
couple,
do you
which
expect?
cracks me up. Um, so then they're talking about like how painful, she asks him how painful it was to get your cardia removed, and she's like, don't say it was barely an inconvenience because that's not true. And Niktos says the cardia is just a tiny part of the soul, intangible. You would think that something unseen couldn't cause much pain, but it felt like my entire chest had been cracked open and my heart dug out by a Dakai's claws and teeth. I nearly lost consciousness, and if I had been weak, I likely would have slipped into stasis, the deep sleep of the gods and primals. And she goes, why did you even do it? And he says, I saw what the loss of love did to my father and what love turned my uncle into, and I refuse to repeat either of those mistakes or endanger another because of what I felt for them. And she apologizes, and he says, I care more because I cannot love, and I believe caring for others is far more important than loving just one. And I just want to say, just read the response to my note. I'm sorry, this is funny. We leave notes to each other in here. I think that this is such a great way. I think this applies to all facets of life in terms of like caring about someone. I feel like caring about somebody means you'll go to greater lengths than when you just love somebody. Like, I'm in love with my husband, which show like, and I care about him a lot, but in this case I think they go hand in hand. But I think there's a magnitude that comes from caring deeply about somebody that I think in this situation, like I can see where he comes from, because it's like if you remove love from the equation and you just have the bare bones care that you have for somebody, like I think it all
Yeah.
builds upon itself. But I think that this is such a beautiful, like, tragic, do not get me wrong,
Right.
but I
I
think
think
that this is beautiful.
I think it's so interesting because you would think naturally that would be the other way around. Like if you love them, you'll do anything for them. But I feel like love gets thrown around so flippantly sometimes that it's like love. It's like, and people get it like confused with infatuation and like that lust and attraction versus like if someone's like, oh, I love you. Yeah, I love you too, kind of thing. But if someone's like, I want you to know I care about you, that just feels so much deeper.
So much more impactful. It
Yeah.
it carries more of a weight, because I think you're right. I do truly think people find their way to love XYZ people, but I think there's some magnitude in saying I care deeply about you.
Yeah. Because that, to
Uh,
me, for some reason, that feels more to the heart than just, oh, love
exactly.
you. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
So then they finish talking about that, and they're talking about how, like, what are we gonna do? Like, this is stressing me out, kind of thing. And Niktos says that he's positive that there will be unwanted visitors, gods, possibly even primals. And Sarah's like, I guess I'm supposed to stay hidden. And he's like, I know you don't like hiding, but I don't like it either. Inevitably, they will see you. And even with the charm, we want to make it to the coronation before that happens. And Sarah goes, and if we don't, and he says, none of them will think your arrival in the Shadowlands as my consort and the ripples of power they felt are coincidental, especially not when especially not when that unknown power was first felt in the mortal realm, and not when they meet you. They'll sense the aura of ether in you. If it hadn't been for Bel's ascension, they might have assumed you were a godling. Now they will question exactly what you are.
Dun, dun, dun.
Our girls really don't understand what they are, ever.
No. One's bred from, one's bred basically from birth to save people in a way of like ascending and eventually finding out she's supposed to destroy the lands. One just thinks her whole life is to die. Like that's her whole purpose in life.
Yeah, and they both have no value to their life at all.
No.
So
They're
I
both
love that.
tragic, and they both this is why we love them so much though, because they're us.
We value our lives. This is for legal purposes a joke.
Yeah.
Chapter 3.
Chapter 3. She's focusing on the fact that he said what you are, not who you are. And she says, and becoming your consort will somehow stop them from questioning that. And he said, no, but will stop them from acting without concerns for the consequences. Because, you know, none of us, we all think before we act. We don't think about the consequences before we jump into action. No one in these
Us?
books. What?
What do you mean?
No. And she's wondering if her head hurts. And she's like, no, it's not that. And she's talking about cancel it. Wouldn't it be easier if we canceled the coronation? There's no point in holding it, because she's just like, I'm just gonna die. There's no point. Like, get the embers out, whatever. Let me die. And he's like, were you not listening? You're gonna have protection. And she's like, I was listening. I remember everything, but that doesn't explain the point behind doing it. You know what's going to happen in 5 months or less. Becoming your consort won't stop that. I'm not going to survive the culling. It is what it is. So why would we welcome such a risk with a pointless coronation? And I can kind of see her point. Like she's still set on the I'm gonna die. She was like given a sense of hope for like a second, and then she's like, nah, I'm still gonna die. So like here we are again. She goes from like hope to no, I'm gonna die, to hope to no, I'm gonna die. And the more it happens, even when she realizes she doesn't want to die, it's so weird because when she realizes that she wants to live and stuff, that's when she comes more like calm and okay with the fact that she has to die. That's so weird.
Peace.
Yeah, she's at peace.
It's her journey to her own peace.
It's like her own acceptance of it and realizing what she deserves and wants, but also knowing what needs to happen. It's very interesting. But Niktos is not happy with it. He does not like her little value of her life. He even says, does the idea of your death not bother you at all? And she says, why don't you just read my emotion and find out?
Mood.
I like that. But yeah, so she's trouble. He doesn't like that. He thinks it's bothersome. Or he thinks that she doesn't think it's bothersome, and she's like, no, I do. And he's like, and she's like, but it is what it is. Like, it's reality. I have to deal with it. So I'm dealing with it. Like, I'm dealing with the fact that I spent my life planning to kill an innocent primal, just like I'm dealing with the fact that I've apparently lived the gods only know how many lives, all because I got scared in one of them and ran off a stupid cliff. Like, how did I run off a cliff? It's not like I would have jumped out and it would have jumped out and surprised me. I had to know the edge was there, but I just kept running. What the hell?
Mood.
I love that. She says, here I am, the end result of your father's potential problematic method of intervention, dealing with it. And no part of dealing with it has anything to do with how I feel about it. And I think that's kind of vital to realize, of like, just because someone's dealing with a situation doesn't mean that's how they feel about it.
Correct. I think we get lost in
the sauce.
Yes, we get lost in the sauce of like, hey, I got to deal with this thing. I don't know. I think a lot of us, or I'm going to speak for both of us, I think we have problems with processing our feelings because we are too focused on trying to deal with the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I see you. I see what you're doing there, Sarah. I see you. I am you. I feel you.
Yeah. She's like, I'm trying to basically like figure out our next step and not dwell on it, because dwelling on it is just going to make me spiral, and spiral's not going to help anyone. But Nikto says, Nikto says, we'll have to disagree on that. What was done to you and then and now wasn't and isn't fair or right. Neither what has been thrust upon you. And she says, unfair to me. What about you? The last thing you need is knowing that it's not. And she couldn't even bring herself to say, knowing basically that he could have stopped this and he made a decision that now he can't. And she's like, it's not fair to put my survival on you. And he says, they're having a disagreement of like who it's more unfair towards. And then they're going into we're talking about you, not me. No, we're talking about you, not me. kind of thing, which I think it's cute. But also
cute.
at the same time, guys, at the same time, like this isn't helping anything.
That's true.
It's so very true. And they're just talking. It's really an unfair situation. Is basically what they're talking about. Um, and she asks him what I think is a valid question. She's like, "Can you hate since you can't love?" Like, because people will be like, "You can't have one without the other,"
Yeah.
kind of thing. And he says, "Hate and love are not two sides of the same coin. One comes from the soul, and the other from the mind. Hate is a product of atrocities committed against someone." Or is birthed from what they have done to themselves and their hellish entitlements. There couldn't be two more different emotions.
Interesting, in my opinion. I think it's like the yin and yang of it all, but do they live in the
Yeah.
same place?
Yeah. Because I think that's one of the first times you ever see a book really describe them as different. People are always so focused on if you can't love or you can't hate, then you can't love, and yada yada yada. And I like the different perspective.
Me too.
On it. And she can't understand why. She thinks that's why he's angry at her, and he comes to tell her that that's not like, yeah, you tried to kill me, but that's not what I'm mad about. He said, "What you plotted to do isn't something one easily forgets, but what enrages me is that you had to know what would have happened to you, even if there had been a small chance you succeeded. If one of my guards didn't get to you, Nectus would have. Your act would have meant your death, the final kind." So he's not mad that she plotted to kill him and betray her. He's mad that she didn't think, or he thought she didn't think about her life. And she's like, "Nah, I knew that would happen." And he says, "That's what infuriates me. From the first moment I saw you, you behaved as if your life holds no value for you." And to be fair, she does act that way.
She was raised that way, though. She literally
Yeah.
was raised
Yeah.
knowing she was going into this to die. Like,
Yeah.
bruh, how else do you think this girl is gonna cope? You
Yeah.
teach her a couple mechanisms other than breathe in, hold, and breathe out.
No. Basically, her family said, "We're going to go on vacation. You can't come." Why? Oh, because you got to be raised a certain way to die. You got to kill someone and then you're dead. But like, cool.
Whatever.
Merry Christmas to me. Yeah. So he's mad that she didn't value her life. And that it's understandable on both parts, honestly. And he says you should value your life as much as you do the lives of others, Sarah. And she's trying to be like, "I do value my life," and no, you don't.
No, you don't.
But I love that going through this and his frustration, he goes back to the coordination, and they're back on the coordination, and she's saying, "Whatever protection being crowned as your consort offers cannot be worth it." And he said, "Your safety is worth everything." And she says, "Even the Shadowlands?" And he says, "Yes." Like that, I think, as someone, they're both people that protect their land with everything they have. Like,
yep.
No way. Crap. Sorry. Yeah. But him saying, "Yeah, your safety is worth more than the Shadowlands," and that he means it with everything in his being, like that's, and for someone who can't love, I feel like that's saying something. That is saying something.
Yeah,
But
I well, I guess we'll get to this in a second, but the recurring theme, I think the men in all of these books are very much trying to give the reassurance, but also like trying to reprogram the brokenness that they
right.
have been, programmed to
Yeah.
be.
Sorry, I scrolled away. Oh, and she's focusing on the fact that he said Sarah, not Liesa. Um, I mean, I would be sad not being called Liesa too.
Mood.
Sarah being sad because he's calling her Sarah, not Liesa, and he's valuing the embers over her. That's such a mixed feeling of like, he says he cares about me, but he's calling me Sarah. So does he care about me? And she says, what I carried inside me, the embers were important, not me, never me.
No girl.
And I love that it's not true, you daft girl. No. Was that my note or your note?
That's you.
Okay.
That was your aggression.
I'm funny. But then there's a knock at the door. It's always interrupting the moments they're having. There's problems at the pillars. The kind that need Nyctos. And so he's gotta go away. He's first though, he's changing, and we love when he changes. She's staring at him. He tells her she lies prettily, which I think is funny. And of course she is left behind with, is it Rahar that's with her?
Scion.
I love Scion.
Me too.
The Scion escorts Sarah to her chambers. And he's asking if he should be worried because she has her dagger. And she says, no, unless you give me a reason to use it on him. And she says she doesn't have a plan to. And he's like, you don't want revenge for what I plan? No, she asks him. She says, you don't want revenge for what I plan to do to Nyctos? And he says, what I want doesn't matter. What does is the fact that if I thought you were a real threat to Nyctos, I'd snap your neck myself, as would any of us loyal to him. And yeah, I know he'd kill me for it. That wouldn't stop me. That wouldn't stop any of us. But you're not a real threat to him, are you? He may be attracted to you, but that's about as deep as that shit can ever go.
Yikes.
Yikes.
Stab. Turn the knife. Stab you again.
I know. I love him, but man, did he really like
lay that into her.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's shutting off her emotions. Saying he's wrong, that she is a threat to him. And she's saying that she is, but not because of what she do to him, but because of who she is, like what she has in her, basically. He's like, so should I go ahead and snap your neck then? And she's like, if you want to try. And I think she's actually hoping he would. Honestly, probably. And as a consort, I have no intention of signing my death note. As I said, consort. I have no intention of signing my death note. And she says, I'm not the consort. And he says, you will be. And she says, but will I be your consort?
No, probably not. Well, we'll see. TBD at this chapter.
Yeah, no. Nope. And then we have Orphine. How do you say her name?
I say Orphine.
Orphine. I think I keep saying orphan. It's just really sad of a pronunciation if I think about it. But we end up liking her. She's kind of good. But they're talking about everyone who meets her right now is talking about her plans to kill him and how they would kill her, but they're not going to. But she ends up telling Sarah, she says, you are life. And that is the only reason you still breathe. So that's not going to help her with the whole, it's the embers, not me thing. But, whatever. I keep losing my spot. I'm horrible. Guys, I'm a professional podcaster. I'm doing great. Don't look at me like that. Why do people leave her in her room? She just does spiraling.
I mean, why do people leave us in our rooms?
Because they don't want to listen to our spiraling.
That's very valid.
She's looking at her dagger. The dagger was truly a piece of art with its smooth, lightweight handle and the pommel of the hilt crafted into the shape of a crescent moon. The shadowstone blade itself was a delicate yet fierce shape, like a thin hourglass, and deadly sharp on both sides. The blade smith had carved a dragon into the dagger. Honestly, mood. Its spiked tail following the curve of the blade, and the scaled body and head curved into the hilt where it breathed fire. I want that dagger, man.
I still want that tattoo.
Yep. She's wondering if could losing the ability to love increase one's capacity to be kind. She's wanting to take a bath, but we know she was attacked in that bath, so she's not sure she can ever even relax in it again. And man, there's a lot of this chapter's long. I didn't realize how long this chapter was. She's thinking about how she's his weakness. Oh yeah, this is where fun starts. She's asleep, and then a deafening crack woke her, and it took more than a couple of moments for her to remember where she was. And she kind of goes out into the balcony, even though Orfine tells her not to and to stay inside. Guys, she doesn't listen to rules. It says, deep within the red woods, silver flames rippled and lit the night sky, burning through the crimson sea of leaves. A tree popped, exploding in a shower of silver sparks. There's Draken going around. Tan Draken fired. Whoa, bad scroll. The Tan Draken fired on the redwoods again, hitting the same spot as before. A crack of fiery energy hit the ground, shaking my bones. That was the sound that had woken me. That must be loud if just like a Draken hitting the floor makes that noise. Orfine's trying to tell her to go inside and stay inside. They don't recognize the Draken. And she's like, we gotta help. And she's like, you can help by staying inside the palace where it's currently safe. And she says, I know we don't know each other at all, but I'm not the type of person who stands back and hides when I can fight. And so she says, you're not wearing shoes when she's running out. Shoes, slippers, who needs them? Niktos warned me that you were hard-headed. Did he? As she goes out into the chaos. In chapter 4, they're going out. Her balms warmed and the embers really started pulsating, which tells her that pain and death are everywhere in the smoldering heaps on the ground and in those who still stood. Draken blood burns most alive. Then we got a big bad fight scene.
I really enjoy your sound effects for this fight scene. I'm sure that is literally not how that fight scene goes. Probably roar, fire, brimstone.
Clink, clink, clink.
I'm sure there was clink clanking.
Yeah, I mean there has to be. Clink, clink, roar, fire. Anyways, and they're shrieking. People are falling to the ground, writhing, because they've been hit with Draken blood as it's spewing from a Draken, and it's burning them from the outside. And I'm just like, cool. That's cool. But then it says a large black and gray Draken swooped down from the sky, crashing into its side. Nectus, I rasped, awe by his size. I couldn't even see the other Draken. I love Nectus.
Me too.
I want to see a size comparison of him and Reaver when he's more grown.
I will say I still think Nectus will be, or I think Nectus will still win because Nectus is the OG.
That's true. Well, okay, I guess a good comparison is to see what Jadis, when she's like fully grown, looks like, because she's his daughter. But that's things to think about. They're at the gates. There's a lot of fighting going on. Nectus. It says, jerking to a stop, I swallowed a shout of surprise as they slammed into the partially closed gates, splintering the wood. They poured in through the opening, a mass of sunken, chalky flesh and hungry, wide mouths. There had to be dozens of them, maybe even hundreds. That's gross.
Accurate.
I love how it says, then they were inside the courtyard running faster than I would have thought their frail, malnourished bodies were capable of, but I guess I wasn't the only one motivated by hunger.
I mean, that at least is relatable.
Yep. Then head or heart, they're going after these. These are escaped gods, right? The escaped gods that have
entombed gods.
The entombed, thank you. The entombed gods who have escaped. Head or heart is how you get rid of them. There's still a lot of fighting going on. Boom, bam, boom. And of course, with every fight comes a death. Davina is dead. We didn't know
Davina
much
has
about
left the
her,
chat.
but we are sad she is gone.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I reached Davina's side, air lodged in my too tight throat. Half of her hair was burnt and unrecognizable. The other half had been torn apart by sharpened nails and fangs. It was clear. So she's gone. And of course, what not Poppy, Sarah always wants to do when they're gone is she wants to fix it. But Hector comes up and tells her not to do it. It's only going to make things worse. All this is happening in the first place because of shit like this happening. Like,
Correct.
we want to save people, but there comes a point where you got to recognize it's just going to make everything worse. So she pushes past it. She doesn't do it. There's more fighting. Belle enters the chat with her fighting. Everybody was kung fu fighting.
That's literally what
I know. I saw. That's why the waves in my head. Belle enters the chat. She gives her some lighter weapons, double-edged and more fun.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to know if Letty is at risk too. Sorry, I was putting in a note. Ethon and a few of the Dracons are there in case they need help. And then Belle says, we need to end the buffet they're trying to make of our people. And yes, I love how Belle says our people to her.
Belle is the OG.
Belle is, I love Belle, especially in this book. She's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah's taking count of the fact that here she is. She's going into her zone. She's putting everything in a box, feeling nothing. She's thinking about the fact that she's killed 18 people to come here, so she can't focus on that because she's got to kill some more. Mm-hmm. It says, I came to the Shadowlands, 18 if I counted Tavius. My lip curled in disgust as I thrust once more. I didn't count my stepbrother as he was below even a Barat, but I hadn't tallied since I entered the Shadowlands, and I couldn't start now. Mm-hmm. Which is true. Like, it comes a point you got to stop taking track of that stuff
for your mental health.
Yeah, really though. Like, if you just start keeping track of all that, which there's Niktos who does with his tattoo, but he's not the best mentally stable either. They're getting overgrown. She hits the ground, and then there's someone above her who is not a malnourished god. It is a completely well-fed and well-dressed god, fair hair and skin, and carrying a healthy glow that screamed that he hadn't spent a second of his life entombed. And he recognized her as her by saying, pale hair, freckled, you must be her. Here I thought we would have to go inside to find you, but here you are, charmed. He sees an entombed god behind her, but doesn't say anything, so the entombed god kind of gets his teeth into her. I love that. And then he says, interesting, your blood smells like life, blood, ash, blood, and he's cut off. Orphan coming in, burning him. Yeah.
Burn, baby, burn.
He's on fire. And then, let's see. Yeah, I love how she's like, I would not die like this. Like, I wouldn't want to die by someone feeding off me either, man. But then Niktos in his primal form comes in clutch. It's hot. We love him. Niktos gripped the fallen by the head and ripped him in two, straight down the middle with his bare hands. Hot.
Yeah, that's what I wrote. I wrote hot.
And she even tells him, she's like, because you just, she says she thinks something's wrong with her. And she says, because you just tore apart a god with your hands. And I found that kind of hot. Mood. And I love how Hector goes, for fuck's sake. Oh, we love it. And then, yeah, she tore her way out of there. Niktos realizes that she is hurt and he can feel her pain. And she's like, no, don't worry about me. There's more important stuff. He says, there's not more important stuff. I'm dealing with the more important stuff right now. And he basically tells her, "Nah, you got to go inside." And she asks him, "Does it smell like my blood? Smell like blood and ash?" And he says, "No, your blood smells like a summer storm," which is interesting because I love the smell of a summer storm. So it's interesting. But he tells her that she has to take his blood because she's in the coaling, and he tells her, "You'll enjoy it, I promise." And I love that. I love everything about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know what happens when you take in someone's blood. And he made the mistake of staying with her. He knows what's going to happen. He tells her it can also make you want. And then he says, "I can sense your need, feel it, taste it. You're drowning in it. I'm fucking drowning in it." And she says, "Then drown with me."
Okay, Daddy. And then we go into chapter 5. And then we go into chapter 5. And then Niktos is trying to poor Niktos. He's really just trying to be a very gentlemanly gentleman, and he's like, "It's my blood." And Sarah's like, "What I'm feeling is how I always feel when you touch me, like there is a fire in my blood." And they're having hot desire lusty time. And then here comes Nectus cock blocking.
But
Um
not at the same time.
and Ash is just like, "Keep going, whatever." And Nectus is like, "You in there?" And Nyctos is telling Sarah not to stop. And Nectus is like, "Do you need anything?" And Nyctos is like, "Nectus, get the fuck out of here, bro." Um, and so they're just going. They keep going. You know,
Mood.
it's just, you know, ain't
Go
can't
away,
stop, won't
mom.
stop. Um, and um then they're debriefing after this whole thing. They're debriefing with everyone, and Sarah mentions how like they're talking about who could have been behind the attack, and Nectus goes, "It's possible that a god from another court was here the night of the Dakai attack, saw you at the right moment, and gave a good enough description to allow someone to grab you." And Sarah goes, "Or let me die. That god wasn't there on orders that required me to survive the attack." And Nyctos is like, "Come again?" And Sarah's like, "He saw an entombed god creeping up on me and did nothing to stop it. I thought I told you that." And he's
Oops.
like, "You didn't, dude." And she was like, "Well, yeah. So, I don't think it wanted me alive. Maybe just out of the picture," which kind of makes me think it wasn't Colas if what Penelope said about the embers of life is true. And so they're like, "Well, whoever it was almost got what they wanted." And Nyctos gets all angy. And Nyctos is like, "Calm down. We said almost, bro." And and um they have another moment of like she keeps putting herself in these positions where it's just like she makes a decision because she knows it's like the right thing to do or she wants to help, and then she doubts it later on, knowing that there are consequences or ramifications to her actions, and people are just like, "Would you make a different decision, like if if you were in this position again?" And obviously, like, she won't. And then she ends up back in her room. This girl, I swear. She ends up back in her room, and then she decides she's gonna climb down the balcony side of the palace to, just kind of go for Colas, and because this is all because of her. She's blaming herself, blase squaze.
I love
Um,
how it says that she didn't give herself time to think about how reckless this was. Remember what we just said? Our people always think about the consequences before they do something.
so it's the chapter ends with straightening slowly. I then took off for the gate, knowing there wasn't that much time between patrols. Within minutes, the packed earth gave way to the crunch of gray grass, and then I was under the canopy of leaves the color of blood, and no longer within view of the house of Hades. I was one obstacle closer to fulfilling my duty, my true destiny.
Oh boy.
Sarah, dumbass. And then we go into chapter 6, and literally the first line says, "Killing Colas wouldn't be easy." No shit, honey. No shit.
Obviously.
And she escapes, whatever, and she doesn't get very far because she runs into shades, and
So
like
he
she
warned her about
low
that.
key heals one. Gross. And she's like disturbed. She's like not understanding what goes on, but She is getting attacked and she goes, oh shit. There was no will, no demands, but I felt the ether in my blood building and building. I tried to stop it, but a silvery glow spilled out from my palm, beating back the shade's shadows, peeling back the layers of dull gray, stripping away the wispy shroud until I saw the white of actual bones. A rib cage and a spine and dry withered organs, a wrinkled heart that was a flat gray color. And that heart suddenly beat. Gross! Gross!
She's like
Anyway,
literally putting the flesh and muscles and stuff back onto him.
that's disgusting. I
Yeah.
don't need that visual.
Mhm.
And then to
Too
no
bad.
one's surprise, Nyctos catches her.
Shocker.
Dumbass. And then they go into a screaming match. Nyctos is all like, "Why you no listen to me?" Sarah was all like, "I was trying to save you, you jackass."
You really run from me.
Just literally can't. And then she like freaking puts a dagger to his throat, and he's like, "Do it, slit my throat, but make sure you cut deep to the spine. Otherwise, all you'll accomplish is getting us both bloody."
It's terrifying in a way,
And
honestly.
they're going back and forth, and Sarah goes, "You shouldn't have to worry about hiding who I am. You'll be free of me, and so will all of those who seek shelter under your care. Everyone in the Shadowlands will be safer this way. You will be safer. No one else has to get hurt or die." And Nyctos is all like, "But you would be dead. Collis will destroy you." And she's all like, "Well, that doesn't matter." And he goes, "And you argue that you value your life." Okay, we've had the same conversation over and over again, honey. Like, yeah, I know. And so they're going, he's all like, she's like, "I'm gonna die no matter what." And he's all like, "I will suffer anything Colas dishes out as long as my blood is spilled instead of yours." And she's like, "Why? Why would you do that for me?" She, and, um, she goes, he goes, "The embers of life in you." And she goes, "Fuck the embers of life." And she, well,
He's already
yeets
done that.
him. Yeah, well. Uh, so she says, "Fuck the embers of life." I pushed against this hold, getting nowhere, but something deep in me, something that had been there, tightening and building for fucking years, began to crack. I was just a vessel full of deep scars left behind from the first life I'd taken and all the times after that, leaving the wrong kind of mark behind. I was nothing more than bruises on a blank canvas because I didn't feel it. I didn't mourn those losses. I didn't care because no one else cared beyond what I could do for them. I threw my head back, a scream of frustration and fury burning my throat. From inside the vast cavern that had shattered open, heat rose from within the emptiness. Power, it felt like it had always been there, bright and hot, ancient and unending. Power flowed through my veins. Silvery white light crowded my vision. I slammed my hands into his shoulders as that energy, that pure, primal essence, erupted from my palms and flowed into Nyctos. Big Ripper Dipper, ma'am.
Big Ripper
Big.
Dipper.
I like. In what world did you think that was a good idea? I don't
Again,
think so.
they don't think.
I mean, clearly.
Going into chapter 7, straight her ether slammed right into him, straight into his chest, threw him back. But he was able to stop himself with his wings. It's okay. He stopped himself. He's all good. But in comes Nectus. Said Nectus was not only bonded to Nyctos, he also saw the primal as a member of his family. And so she's like, "This is it. This is where I'm gonna die. Nectus is gonna kill me." But instead, his body, which had to be at least 20 feet, was crouched around her. Crouching around her, not attacking her or anything. And she's kind of like super stiff. And he says he's not a threat to you. He's protecting you. And she's like, "From what?" And he says, "From me." And she's like, "But I hurt you." And he says he's worried that I will retaliate out of reflex, that I will do more than just hurt you. He says he almost did. She doesn't believe that, of course. She doesn't think he could hurt you. But he kind of calms down, is breathing. He's fine. He's good. She's big, like, "I didn't know I could do that. I'm more powerful than I thought, man. I don't know." And they tell her that when a god enters the culling, their essence increases and grows stronger. And as they get closer to completing the culling, they can have outbursts. It's usually tied to heightened emotions, but that doesn't happen with a godling, not when they go through the culling. Many of them can't even harness the essence like that, even if they ascend. They simply don't have enough ether in them for that. Makes me think of a toddler going through a rampage, honestly. But everything makes
Mood.
me think of a toddler. Let's be honest.
That is very true.
Yeah. So basically, they're saying this wasn't your fault. It's the essence. She's still freaking out though because she hurt him. She didn't think that was possible. Um. Then we love that Nectus shifts forms
I love
and he's
Nectus.
naked. I love how she says, "You're naked. Does that bother you? Maybe." And Nikto says, "Perhaps you shouldn't continue staring at him." And she says, "How can I not?" And honestly, how can we not?
Accurate.
But he puts pants on in his fancy way that Reaver can't. And she tells him about the shades, how she touched them, and it was starting to come back to life. And they're like, "Huh." And they said Ethos could have done that. Um, and so it just shows that the essence is getting more powerful of that. Because she was like, "You don't understand. I touched it, and it came back to life." Um, and she says, "Right before you killed it, it spoke to me." And he said, "You sure this shade spoke?" And they realized I said my queen, and they're like, "Crap, that's the embers. Like that's not good." But they said, "I don't think even Colas knew. You should probably avoid touching anything dead until you handle those embers." And I'll try definitely avoiding doing that. It'll be hard because I do like to touch dead things.
I mean,
I'm Poppy
honey,
and touching things, man. I mean, she
honestly.
does like to touch dead things, though. That is very fair.
Yep.
Um, and they're they're going back and forth about the Colas thing and why she went back there, and he tells her, your destiny is not to die at the hands of Colas. He's like adamant, you are not going to die to Colas. You're not going to go to Colas. Nothing to do with Colas. And she says, "Then what is my destiny?" He said, "To be my consort, whether you like it or not," which is the most romantic proposal I've ever heard, honestly. Um, and then poor orphan. Oh yeah, he tells her, "Next time you put a dagger to my throat, you better mean it." And she says, "Even if it's yours," and he said, "Especially if it's mine." And they go back to the palace, and poor orphan is like, "I'm sorry, this was my fault." And she's like, "No, it's my fault." And he's like, "Yeah, actually, it is her fault."
Facts.
And he's telling her to go to her room, and she says, "Don't you dare order me about as if I'm a child." He said, "I wouldn't have to if you didn't behave like one." And she said, "You sure as hell didn't think I was behaving like one, you when you had me in your bed and your fangs in my throat." And
Pop off, girlfriend.
right? It's like, well, there you go. There you go. And then Ector's like, "Whoa, I don't want to be here for this." Um,
Well, you came to the wrong party, bud.
yep. Yeah. No, so go back and forth. She says, "Look, the last thing I need is to." Oh, she tells him that they don't like her, and he's like, "Who said anything?" He said, "Look, the last thing I need is to make them more unhappy with me, and I don't want to. They already have every reason to dislike me. They're loyal to you, and I'm just the consort you never wanted who planned to kill you. If they had their way, I wouldn't be here. It is what it is." And he does not like that. And then he realizes how she escaped and that had a balcony. And he says, "Did you climb down the side of the palace?" And she said, "Possibly." And he's like, "Part of me is impressed that you managed that, but you could have broken your neck." And she's like, "But I didn't." And he says, "There's such a thing as being too bold, too brave." And she says, "Aren't you tired? Let's skip this conversation."
Mood.
And yeah, right. And he's like, "No, we're not doing this. Like, I want to sleep. You want to sleep. You're going to sleep in my room because I can't trust you not to climb down out of there." And she's stubborn. She's like, "No, I'm not doing it." So what does he do? Straight up, like, arm bars
Yeets
her
her.
over his shoulder. And they go into the room, and he starts undoing her boots, and she's like, "What the fuck?" And he said, "Your boots are as filthy as your mouth. And while I enjoy that mouth in my bed, I won't enjoy the boots. They need to come off too." And he looks at her breeches and says, "They need to come off too." She says, "Wow, I don't think I've ever had a man ask me to remove my clothing so romantically before."
Yeah, well.
Uh, and then he undresses her and really lets tells her to take off her pants, and she tells him, if you want them off, you take them off. Like, yes, yes, honey, that is the right response. And then they lay down, and he puts his arm around her waist. Says his arm was still draped over my waist, but no other parts of our bodies touched, even though there couldn't be more than an inch or so of space separating us. My eyes were wide and fixed in the darkness. Several moments passed. I didn't think you meant within arm's reach in the literal sense. And he said, I did. And then they're sleeping, and she kind of gets woken up by him, like in it, almost, I would say, in a panic attack, almost like the base of one. And he says, promise me you'll never go after Cullis again. And her heart stuttered as she sucked in a shallow breath. Promise me, Sarah, never again. And she said, I promise. After this one? Okay. So she woke up and Niktos is gone. Big ripper. I'd be sad waking up in here. I would think it's a dream. I'd be like, I'm in his bed. But otherwise, is this real? Someone's at my door. Orphan comes in, says, once you're ready, I'm going to escort you to Niktos. Please don't have to make a run for it again. Poor Orphan. She's going to have PTSD about what this girl did.
Probably.
She says, what you did could have ended in disaster, but your willingness to take such a risk speaks of your integrity, and that is to be respected, honored. And I love that. I love that she tells her that, like, yeah, it was a risk, but I honor what you did. But they're taking her to Niktos, and she's kind of confused about where they're going. And they're going into the throne room. There's across the closed doors, painted behind the spiral vines with the shape of a wolf, a white wolf. But anyways, she's really confused because like all the guards are here, and they're all gathered, and Niktos is like speaking to them, and when she gets up there, she says, all of them those gathered here are some of my most trusted. They have sworn to protect the Shadowlands and stand against Cullis and those who support the false primal of life. All of them have done so with the knowledge that their oath will likely end in death, and yet they actively work to restore Elysium to that what it once was, a realm of peace and fairness to all. They're all brave, almost to a fault, just as you are. And any of them would have done as you did the other night. And he's like, he's making sure people can hear them. Any of them would have sacrificed themselves if they thought that would protect the Shadowlands and those who seek to shelter here. And then he tells them, Seraphina has taken no oaths, sworn no loyalties, nor does she yet wear the crown of the consort. She has not been here long, but she is still willing to risk her life to protect all of you, all of those within the Shadowlands and beyond. Believing that she was the cause of the recent attack, she planned to turn herself over to Cullis. Though she is not the cause, he said. Her bravery is unmatched, even among all of you. And they're all like, what? What? And he says, Seraphina will be a consort. I keep saying concert, man. Seraphina will be a consort more worthy of the sword and shields each of you will wield to guard her. One of the Shadowlands will be honored to have. And he says, and then Ector steps forward from the throne, withdrawing his sword, crossing it over his chest and lowering himself to one knee, and says that we will endeavor to be deserving of such an honor. And she's like stumbling, and he's studying her as Niktos and Reaver lift their wings and stretch their necks, letting out a staggering high-pitched call. Scion did the same thing. Rahar and the twins, then shouts echoed Ector's vow, and swords were lifted. Gods and guards alike knelt, and he says just to her, none of them will harbor any ill thoughts toward you now. They will see you as you are, brave and daring. And if they still harbor any ill thoughts, they will be the last ones they ever have. No matter how loyal they are to the Shadowlands, I will destroy them. And she's sitting there like, I can't believe he said this, but obviously because he couldn't forget what I said, but he checkmated her. He said, because Niktos had just ensured that all in the room would be highly unlikely to aid me in any future attempts to go to Colas. She looks at him and says, clever bastard. And he smiles and says, I know. And she says, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was more than a destiny I'd never agreed to. More than the embers I carried with me. I felt like more.
Oh, I love her. I love them. Oh, and that's how we're gonna end part 1. We didn't get as far as I thought we would, but like that's okay. That's okay. Part 2 will be out tomorrow. Sippin' and bitchin' everywhere. And
Everywhere.
we'll catch you on the next one. Bye, bitches.